decided to extend another week and stay in Florida before heading back for school and some other work things that I have to be in person for. And I'm still on just this space right now over these past couple of weeks of resetting and thinking about sustainability for myself in terms of what I'm building. And as I've said before, I think a lot of that is layered in terms of what that looks like for you, as well as what that looks like in for the work or how it's showing up. But one of the things that I was really reflecting on today that's really been impactful for me over the years is traveling with my routine. And so, what do I mean by that? I have really got into a space where I've figured out what works for me, and I will bring that with me when I travel. So, whether it's traveling for work, whether it's traveling to visit people, whether it's traveling for leisure, there are certain things that I will keep as non negotiables no matter what. And I do it because it helps me pour back into myself. And so one of those things is nutrition. Like still trying to eat, high protein in the morning. Um, Obviously, it looks a little different given I'm out of my day to day routine, but still trying to prioritize nutrition in a way of giving my body what it needs, especially to just replenish, refuel, to just feel good as well as how it relates to training. So, still continuing to stay on top of my nutrition is number one. Another piece is sleep. I will always prioritize sleep. I will get made fun of for people hanging out and doing things, and obviously there's compromise to all of this. So this isn't always just it has to be my way. There is a little bit of flexibility within that, but generally speaking, 8:30, 9 o'clock rolls around. I'll see everyone. Like I'm off to bed. Why? Because I get up, I do my morning routine, I train, and get into my day. That really helps. I have to prioritize sleep. So no matter where I am, again, sleep is a big piece for me. And then another one is just my training and movement. And sometimes that doesn't always look the same as when I'm in my routine and doing things at home, but still moving my body, whether that's working out, running, going on a walk even. One of the things I love, especially being down in Florida, is I get to go on morning walks with my mom every once in a while. So just really prioritizing those times. But that has really helped me from a sustainability standpoint because I don't completely throw myself off and then have to figure out how to get all these things back on track. I travel with my routines, and it honestly is probably less about traveling with my routines and more of it's just who I am, and I know it works for me and it helps me feel my best and be my best, and actually rest and reset. And so I prioritize that, and people have learned to understand that that's just who I am. And again, there are compromises. I will stay up late. I will eat that different thing. I will not train maybe that one day in the morning or whatever. But for the most part, like that's just more of who I am to people around me. And it's nice because it's that boundary and that understanding, and it allows me to continue to do what really works for me. And again, I just think as I continue to reflect on sustainability, reflect on how do you go hard for long periods of time, but not at the cost of you. Um, I think my routine and just staying grounded in that routine has really helped me over the years because again, I can be anywhere. Those aspects are going to exist, and so it helps me stay in my rhythm a little bit, and just feel good. So maybe that resonates with you. Maybe you're someone who's similar in terms of you need to kind of bring some of that routine or who you are with you to all these the different places and spaces you show up. And maybe if you're thinking about that, maybe if you're someone who struggles, or like your environment will throw you off, or you kind of behave or show up dependent on the environment, and it's hard for you to navigate, or it's hard for you to bounce back, and maybe that could be work related, maybe that could be health and wellness related. I would just encourage and invite you to be thinking about, like, what are those some foundational things that you have in place that allow you to show up your best, feel your best, be your best, and how can you create those spaces in regardless of where you are, and what can that look like? And again, there's a spectrum to how all of that shows up. But if you start thinking about those things and start thinking about what has to exist that's going to allow me to show up and feel my best and be my best, and you prioritize those pieces, you're going to be thankful you did, as well as every single person around you. So as some of you may know, and if you've been following along, you've heard me reference the Center for Human Skills. It's a nonprofit that I'm a part of, and really we're in the phase of building out and starting up this nonprofit. I am involved with the infrastructure and the organizational development behind all of that. And so much right now is around building partnerships, building relationships, telling our story, and getting people involved and behind what we're doing. And one of the things I realized is you all may not actually know what the Center for Human Skills is, the work that we're committed to, how we even started. And so I thought I would just take a moment and share with you all kind of a overarching storyline of how we got to where we are today and the work we're committed to doing. Back in 2023, there was an organization called SEL for US. It was an organization committed to social and emotional development across the nation. What their mission was and what they were looking to do was start all of these different alliances in all the states to get up and running, to be able to support, develop, pour into, advocate for work of social and emotional development within education. So in 2023, they connected with Dr. Beth Rice, Dr. Megan Lyons, and really started that work to get North Carolina up and running. It's a grassroots alliance, and so these were researchers, practitioners, people who were working in school districts, people who were working at the state level, nonprofit people, family and community people, researchers at universities, everyone coming together to volunteer their time to pour into how do we continue to move this work forward in our state. I got involved late 2024, early 2025. I was connected to Dr. Beth Rice and kind of just jumped all in. One thing for me, especially as a founder and someone who was so used to working on teams and transitioned to working by myself, essentially, was I really loved coming together with like-minded people who were trying to move this work forward. So I got involved in around that winter of late 24, early 25. Can't remember exactly the date. But after that, what started happening was we had a lot of events, there was a lot of momentum, and everything just kept building. Our membership was increasing, resources people needed across the state in terms of how to support some of this work was increasing, the well-being and need for educators was increasing, and there was this overwhelming sense of we need this stuff, we don't have access to this stuff, we just value this time and space, and we want to continue to be able to support our students as well as our adults. And so that was kind of evolving. What happened was in the winter of 2026, we had come together to understand the way that we had been operating isn't going to really be able to support the needs of our state. Because across the board, across how our leadership team was showing up, which made up around 35 people with 1,000 members, was we can't actually support the needs of the state in our current way that we were operating. We were a grassroots alliance. and we were just showing up in 4 specific areas, and we knew it needed to look different. So we came together as a leadership team in 2026 and essentially made a transition and a decision as a group to say we actually need to go through the process of establishing ourselves as a nonprofit, because if we establish ourselves as a nonprofit, we'll be able to do certain things and meet certain needs within the state and be able to evolve what that looks like, and also internally operate different in terms of how we can actually do this work. One of the big adjustments that came out of that was so much of what we did originally was focused in education that we added workforce. The reason why we added workforce was because a lot of the research was indicating how much of a need that was. And when we were in conversations with educators, a lot of those conversations were starting to trickle into workforce development. How are they prepared for that? Higher ed sits in between that as well, and that was part of the conversation too. So we almost looked at it as, well, instead of just focusing on education, what if we actually focused on the lifespan of a human, right? We think about them from birth all the way through into retirement, and what are those systems and what are those spaces that they integrate into, and how can we support within those contexts. And so for right now, the way that we're organizing ourselves is in education, workforce, and community. Those are the 3 kind of areas that we've expanded into. What our mission really is to hit that lifespan. It's to be able to support the development of individuals and give them the skills necessary to build this holistic approach to self, as well as how do we create the systems to be built around those things. So a lot of what we do is around building capacity, communities of practice, being a resource hub. We also now are building out an arm around research and impact, because we want to be able to research and do a lot of this work and show the impacts of this work across the state. And so that's a little bit about the Center for Human Skills. I am sure there's so much more I can talk about. I spent so much time talking about it and the work that we're doing. But ultimately, what we did was in 2023, we started as a grassroots alliance that was focused on education. And over time, as membership grew, as our visibility grew, as the events and the spaces we were showing up in grew, the need became more, the people who wanted to be a part of what we were building continued to increase. Again, we're near 1,000 members at this point. And so we knew, in order to meet the needs of the state and what we were seeing in research and data from an education and a workforce sense, that we had to structure ourselves differently. And so we kind of look at ourselves as this hub where we can create the conditions to develop and train people, to bring people together, to break people out of their silos, to collaborate and work alongside one another, and then implement into their spaces. We are less focused on the little bit of research around the specific details, and more around how are we translating these skills related to human development. So relationships, belonging, well-being, emotional intelligence, all of those components are a part of how we're developing and training people, and we're also designing systems that are going to allow those things to exist. So really excited about the direction that we're going, really excited to continue to tell the story, share more with you all. If you have questions for me, reach out. If you want to know more, reach out. So I was sharing with you all the idea around designing environments within organizations around people's desired emotion. I am collaborating with an organization around kind of how to bridge the gap and how to bookend that. What I mean by that is, how can we get a pulse on how people currently are feeling, how people want to feel, and basically around emotional intelligence skills and different aspects of that, specifically for leaders, how can we actually design in between that and get them into that desired emotion more frequently than not. But the interesting thing I want to share and how it really just shows up is when I was in the conversation designing with the person I'm collaborating with, they kind of stepped back at one point and they were like, you know what? I'm actually thinking about this in my own experience. And I was like, well, tell me more. Like, what do you mean by that? And she was reflecting on how for her, the emotion she wants to experience day in and day out is challenged. Like, she thrives in challenge. She loves to be creative, innovative, think outside the box, like really tackle these things that make her think and work hard. And so for her, that desired emotion is challenged. But what she said was most of her former bosses really tried to lean into appreciation. So what they would do is they would come to her and they would say, hey, great job, or great effort, or great work. And they thought as leaders, they were doing a great job. Like, they were motivating, they were encouraging her by telling her how great she was doing. And she said to me, Griffin, they leaned so heavily into appreciation, but I didn't need appreciation. Like, I don't need someone to tell me I'm doing a good job. I need someone who's going to allow me and support me in leaning into challenges. And she was like, man, I didn't have the language for that at that point, but that would have been so great to be able, one, to articulate, and two, for my leaders to actually understand what I was looking for in terms of desired emotion, so that they could help me show up in a space that fulfills me, makes me feel my absolute best. So that was just an example, and I wanted to share that with you all because we all have desired emotions of how we want to feel when we are working. And whether we're leaders or, and regardless of who our boss is, I think one of the most important things is they actually start to understand what that means for us. And they start to be able to lean into that alongside of us so that we can step into that experience of how we want to feel more frequently than not. And what do we do when we're not feeling that way?